We're going to be rebooting with RFID. Now, you'll notice in a couple of these slides, what you'll see with a lot of this technology, there's no people. And I think Terry did a really wonderful job in explaining, fixed technology really being the direction that a lot of this is going to be going in. And in here, we're looking at a CYBRA cage, which we developed. Again, this is something for, it took companies a lot of manpower, a lot of resources, and a lot of folks to do what we would have as a spot verification or a spot count, if you will, of stock coming in from source. So you would pull maybe 1 out of 10, 1 out of 50, 1 out of 20, depending upon the nature of your product. And then you would pop those boxes open and you would compare them against the PO file just to do a random audit, if you will, which was a very manual process. And what CYBRA did a number of years ago in using the RFID technology was to develop a very rapid, very cost-efficient method to audit every carton coming in from source. So we developed a system using a series of antennas in a very specific pattern, using a set of very specific algorithms to be able to look inside of a box in about 400 milliseconds and know everything that was in that carton. Even it counts as somewhere around today, 200 items in a carton, and getting 99.97% accuracy of being able to know what's inside that box. And then working with attributes and some other rules, able to divert cartons that we would deem non-compliant into an area for either a second scan or for some manual handling. Next slide, please. The reason we did this, and again, this gets down to the very basics of RFID. Terry talked a little bit about barcodes, and barcodes are very accurate. They're one at a time. It takes one person a lot of work to achieve one success, if you will. Here we see a young man with one pole and one hook and basically one fish. But to do that all day long, and you can just imagine all of the items that you might miss along the way in terms of either cycle counting or validating or auditing or whatever that internal process that might be, and the number of people individually with hardware trying to do the same process, basically increasing the error rates. To the right, we can see a different process, RFID. It's a batch technology. It's very secure. It's very accurate when it's configured properly. And again, these are some of the things that we put together in a site survey to ensure that we get the accuracies and the speed that we're looking for. So here we can see with just a few people, the amount of work that's being done in a very short period of time. Next slide. So here's what RFID does. It's going to improve profit margins, obviously, because of the speed, accuracy, manpower and labor reduction, and error elimination. You're going to have real-time inventory visibility. If you've got to handle some special orders that come in, you have customer service, people doing change orders and whatnot upstairs, sending requests down to outbound, if you will, pick, pack, and trying to fix orders. Having real-time visibility to inventory is critical, especially today as we're seeing in terms of e-commerce. If you're online and you're placing an order for something, if it's on the screen, you want to put your tag on it, you put your credit card in, you want to see it show up at your door. You don't want to get an email 3 days later saying, hey, sorry, somebody else beat you to it. It kind of takes the fun out of ordering some of the items that we would do, especially in the times that we have today, rather than going into the stores, ordering online. So just critical to have these types of technologies in place. Being able to know where things are, accurate product location and availability of that information. It's so much easier to have, again, with limited resources. If you're spacing and you're social distancing and you're trying to operate a warehouse at the same time, maintaining compliance to some CDC standards, knowing where things are and being able to be directed by a system that's empowered with an RFID or a technology solution is invaluable. Now, if you can take this accurate product location technology and enhance it and put tags on people at the same time, again, CYBRA has unique ability of doing things that haven't been done before, and being able to track mixing RTLS and barcodes together and maintaining social distancing between people in a distribution center, being able to record if two individuals come together for whatever reason, log which two entities those were, and still have the system functioning and directing and sending folks to different areas to pick product to support e-com initiatives. Optimized fulfillment. Using the technology, using these automated fixed read solutions, being able to validate an outbound shipment. Typically, it was driven by what we would call chargebacks, was a term that's been used for a while. Today, I think some retail entities describe it as a expense offset. If they have to handle your product because for whatever reason you didn't comply to some sort of pack standard, there's a cost associated to that. So by using these technologies, these what we call the CYBRA Cage and fixed technology, there's a serious reduction and a cost elimination, if you will, in terms of having accurate outbound shipments. We talked a little bit about increased manpower utilization, being able to know where people are, having people directed to specific locations to pick specific products to satisfy a specific order, all happening autonomously, and feeding that information back as different tasks are completed and moving forward. And of course, the elimination of stockouts. As I get into the next couple of slides, there's another aspect of this, not only in terms of the CYBRA Cage, but the CYBRA VMI Solution. Here's our cage slide. Auditing, validation, and again, our accuracies is 99.97, and that was actually validated by a little university that's out there that has been monitoring the RFID space and supporting RFID for many years. Next slide. The VMI solution is a unique solution that CYBRA had put together. And again, this is the ability of being able to monitor inventory over a period of time and feeding that information back to a central repository. So if I have inventory that's been dispersed into multiple locations, I'm not shipping from a centralized DC anymore. I've decentralized my distribution operation to be more responsive to customers' e-com orders. So now I've put inventory into multiple locations geographically. So here we've developed a system where we put RFID fixed infrastructure, autonomous, and it's monitoring the inventory on a regular basis. So as orders are picked, as items are picked, as product is picked for e-com purposes, the system is established internally with some rules which include min-max levels. So as I start to approach a condition yellow, I can have alerts going out to replenish, and then when I get into an actual yellow condition, that replenishment is automatically generated before I'm in a stock out position. So in all of these locations, they're tied back in. We have a little infrastructure. This is sort of a little more detail than we need to get into, and how we were able to monitor hundreds of readers and thousands of antennas, and feeding all that information back to a central repository, and then being able to trigger which location is closer, setting, again, rules. Am I going to use the store as a DC or a shipment location? Do I have off-site storage? Do I have containers? Where are these located? And geographically, geo-mapping where this inventory is. Again, because I'm using RFID and I'm using fixed readers, I have time and date, I have item, I have quantity, and I have location. So I can now take a look at where I'm flush in product that's the most geographically convenient to the replenishment location, and then direct shipments from that location to keep the supply chain active and running with as few and as minimal people as possible. So again, reducing costs with a minor investment, if you will, overall in the technology. The ROI will happen very quickly. Next slide, please. Yeah, this hits a little bit more into the detail in the VMI, in pulsing the RF and being able to read an RFID tag. I think Terry did a really good job in going over the chip that's in the label and encoding it properly, using some of the printers that we spoke about earlier, and our encoding system, our encoding schema, being able to encode these tags properly for logistics and distribution, bringing it in from source. We're actually able to transmit a lot of this print detail, if you will, to source. So if we have strong suppliers that we've been working with for many years, we can transmit order detail to those locations, which will automatically generate the RFID tags to be put on product. So now that they can ship from source, and we can monitor that in transit. Again, another alert, put a rule in place. This is now in transit. We want to watch it. We can set some sort of criteria as to a day, a week, a few days. And if we don't see that received at the receiving location in, let's say, 7 days, an alert goes out to the stakeholders and will trigger them to go out and find out, do we have a tracking number? Is the shipment in transit? Is it a partial receipt? Did the truck drop off partial of the order, not all of it? But with technology, all of this happens autonomously and very quickly and very accurately. Next slide. Yeah, this gets a little bit into the weeds as well, how the VMI system works. This is just one configuration. But if you could imagine taking the RFID and then mixing it with, let's say, RTLS. So now I'm tracking people, I'm tracking product, and everything is moving, I want to say like a well-oiled machine. But as you can see, by using the technology versus to what many folks are doing today, today things are very haphazard. How do you monitor an inventory in a location today? Once you start picking, you can do some guesswork. You take some manpower, you throw some manpower as somebody has to go in and count boxes. Maybe they've been graced with a barcode scanner, and they can go in and start scanning barcodes, and maybe they look and they say, oh, it's supposed to be 10 boxes, so I'll take the one box and I'll scan it 10 times. Again, because barcodes are not serialized. So we can do that. Someone going out and taking an inventory can take one box and scan it 12 times, 10 times, and that becomes your inventory. Whereby with RFID and serialization, using a lot of the GS1 standards that have been deployed to maintain the integrity of the entire open supply chain, you can see very easily how you just can't grab one box and scan it 10 times and say you have 10. So that's the beauty of the technology. That's how you validate. That's how you get the accuracy. And that's how you get the visibility, the real visibility to the data that you have, and be able to make intelligent decisions into how to run the business versus trying to run your business with bad information. Next slide. There we go. By deploying technology in today's world, especially post COVID-19, you can become a superhero. We have a lot of heroes out there today that are keeping our shelves stocked. They're keeping food on our shelves in our supermarkets. They're bringing product to our doors, making sure all of us have all those paper products that are so important to so many of us. So again, technology, RFID, RTLS, mixing a lot of these technologies together, barcodes, NFC, again, the Internet of Things, kind of what we call cyber, it's what we call our Edgefinity and beyond is where we're going with this rebooting using RFID. Sheldon, do we have anybody with any questions? Okay, I can't hear you, so I'm going to push this button.
VMI means vendor managed inventory. So is that similar to like a DSD, like direct to store, like for example, in a retail situation where the driver who does the delivery, he goes in and he's responsible to set up the stock. But in an industrial customer, does the driver go in and actually manage the inventory, or is it using like a remote system like this, the VMI?
Well, that's exactly it, Sheldon. If you have a driver that needs to get around and do deliveries, that driver's not going to have time to not only take his pallet jack and take product off of his truck, but also go out into a location and try to take inventory to see what is actually there. All of that really needs to be predetermined so that when that truck leaves the DC to that location, it knows specifically what that location needs. So when it does take the pallet jack and the product comes off that truck, it's very quick, it's very accurate, and it's actually what the location needs.
Gotcha. Are there other industries where you're seeing RFID being used where perhaps you might not have thought so? Traditionally it may not be, for example, some of our green implementations.
Okay, yeah, we have we've developed a number of solutions in the cannabis industry. We're actually tracking, and again, this is part of state mandate, and of course, every state is different. So the encoding schemas, the prerequisites, what the state wants to know, how much saleable product, bud, THC, CBD did you make, where the producer needs information as to which species, which phenotype, which batch is actually generating the chemical elements that they're looking for, whether it be CBD or THC. So you need to use a technology that can both be helpful to someone that's in production so that they can see the work in process, they can see how their how the DNA of the product that they're developing is the best for the time and effort and the energy that they're putting into it, versus being able to state requirements, which want to know, okay, you planted this many seeds, you got this many pounds of plants, but this much bud came off it, but now you've got moisture loss, so you've lost some 20% of your weight. Where did it go? Are we seeing trends? There really is no way to do this manually without throwing a tremendous amount of resources and manpower at it. But with RFID, being able to look for trends, look for peaks and valleys, looking for all of a sudden there's a 35% drop in weight in a certain type of plant. Where did that 35%, where'd that extra 15% go? What caused that? Was there a drop in the humidity levels that are maintained in the grow rooms and propagation and harvest? Was it sitting out in the hall a little bit longer than the next batch that came through? But by having all of this data and visibility to this data, you can now see where you need to make corrections. This is almost like in Kaizen or Six Sigma. How can I improve process? How can I take steps out of process and yet get a better result? And the only way to do that is with technology and with automation.
What's the like the pedigree? How do you literally walk us through the steps? From, I guess you're starting with seed, or what? What are you starting with?
Well, you could start with seed, but typically what you're going to start with is what they call a mother plant. The mother plant has been genetically designed to produce a certain type of THC, if you will. It might be a sativa, it might be an indica, it might be a wake-up juice, it might be a go-to-sleep juice. It might be a hybrid where you mix the two together for someone that might have rheumatoid arthritis or someone that has some joint pain or whatnot. So you can mix a couple of these blends of indica and sativa together to get the calming effect, but still not put the person to sleep. They're still able to get up and function and still produce, still perform tasks in their environment. So it becomes very important to track that. So now once you've developed a particular plant that has those properties, you want to get as much out of that plant as possible. So what you do is you take clippings off it, and then you take those clippings and you root those clippings in a special solution using special lighting, heat, and other components. And that mother plant produces more shoots, if you will. So as you take these trays and you move them off into propagation, these plants will then get to a certain height. And once you get over 8 to 12 inches, you can determine if it's a runt or not, and you can pick those out. And with RFID, it becomes very easy to see. If I have a tray of 30 and I culled 5, I have 25 left, and that becomes very valuable to me so I can see what's happening in the supply chain. Now, I push that off into propagation. Propagation, it goes into a 5-foot plant. It goes into what they call a budding process. And again, all of this happens. There are no seeds. You cannot have seeds. Seed actually destroys the entire process with this particular plant, if you will. So that plant will then bud, and what they'll do is we'll change the lighting and then change the sequencing and the pulsing to maximize the THC in that bud production. And then those buds are harvested in special equipment that separates the leaves, stems, and stalks. And again, all of that's weighed when we have the bud that comes out, and those stems and stalks and whatnot are weighed and then ground into some type of soil mixture to render them useless for any other purpose. So now that I have that bud, it's got to go to a drying rack. I can't use it in its current form. So I've got to bring it to a drying room where I've got to maintain certain humidity levels. It could be 58%, 62%, whatever's working for that particular blend, so I don't have weight loss. And then when it comes from that and it goes into packaging, I may extract oils from it. I may package the flour, as they call it. I may pre-roll it. I may put it into cookies, cakes, and candies, and all sorts of other end components. So now what I've got to do is I have to track that weight into those products. So now that I have these products, I need to identify each individual packaging unit. This is a medical environment, is when you're getting down to this. It's got to be 100% accurate. It's got to be secure, and there's no room for error. And using the RFID systems that we have put into place, there is no room for error. If anything, there's any hiccups along the supply chain, we have an immediate visibility to that with a time and a date stamp of when that activity or whenever that anomaly occurred. And we could even go back to video and review video with the time and date stamp to see what was going on in that area if that whatever error occurred. Now, if I have to store this material, I need to store it in a very secure vault type of environment. So what I'll do is I'll take all of this product, if you will, and I can read 1,500 vials of product in a few seconds, if you will, 2 to 3 seconds, accurately read all of these EPCs, these serial numbers, and I put them away in the vault, and I have visibility now to that inventory. Now, at the same time this is happening, the stores are selling products. So I know by SKU, by phenotype, by strain, by batch, what's selling at the store. So if I see folks are leaning towards a specific sativa, hybrid, indica, I can now adjust my clipping and clone production to increase my clones to get the propagation moving, so that if there's any type of, as I'm seeing, again, a yellow condition, like a vendor managed inventory, I'm getting into a yellow condition at the retail level, my plants are going to take a certain, I mean, I can't turn up the heat on the oven and bake the cake faster. It's not going to happen. The plants are going to grow at a certain rate, and the lighting's got to be the same. So by having all of this, these processes automated with fixed readers and autonomously without human intervention, these decisions can be made, if not just by having reports and seeing trends, but now the way we set up our systems is putting rules in place to actually trigger activity autonomously, where clippings and clones are generated and put into production without someone having to sit down with a spreadsheet and an Excel sheet and key in information and hand that off to somebody else, who's going to hand that off to somebody else, who's going to give it to somebody to run it down to the supply room. This can all happen electronically on our magic devices, my little device here now that allows me to communicate with us today. That we have backup technology to back us up.
Very good. Well, talked about a little bit about, because you've got, big part of your experience is in the retail supply chain, but you've seen a lot of opportunities in industrial and other kinds of areas. Or what sorts of solutions are you seeing now?
Well, that's a good question. We spend a number of years, you and I together, with a number of our other partners, in supporting, developing, configuring, and working with the retail space and trying to bring automated solutions to their environment. The industrial sector, a lot of these engineers have heard about RFID, but it was sort of voodoo science, if you will. It was, it's there, but it's not there. And Walmart came and Walmart left, and JCPenney came and JCPenney left. And, do I want to stick my neck out as an engineer to incorporate this technology into my production, manufacturing, injection molding, printing, whatever my operation is? But now the technology's proven. We've proven it with the CYBRA Cage. We've proven it with the VMI Solution. We're now scaling it from those types of batch read environments where we have tremendous value, tremendous ROI, but now we can pick up a lot of this residual where if I need to keep track of tooling and dies, they're all tracked by serial number. There's a couple of scientific companies that we worked with that have cylinders that are serial numbered because the gas that goes into the cylinder goes into a hospital, but the gas in this cylinder goes into electronics manufacturing, and the gas that's in this cylinder goes into another operation. And the connectors that connect into it that provide information to their computer systems are all different. And the only way to be sure, again, is this serialized process. And then how do you find the serial number on a 6-foot aluminum tank that's holding, 50 gallons of gas, and without going up to it and trying to spin it and looking around the neck and the collar and trying to find the serial number and then read it after it's been handled. Maybe it's been outside, just about impossible. So we have a number of locations where by putting RFID tags on these products, we're able to cycle count, seek and find, validate that the right gas is going in the right tank, the right dye is going on the right press, the right mold is going in the right injection molder, whether it be for tires or for medical syringes. So it has tremendous value in the accuracy of work in process and speeding up the process to make sure before I turn on this press, before I check, before I even turn on this machine or allocate resources to that location, I have all the pieces and parts I need, so I don't have to stall, back up, put everything in a corner, try to queue something else up, have everybody running around like like chickens without heads, and then trying to get this press back online and get the dye in place, the registration in place. The press is wet with ink, but I don't have pieces. Now what do? I got to wash the press down and set it up for something else, or I got to leave it sit there hoping FedEx comes in the morning with whatever it is I need for that particular process. So we're seeing a big trend in medical, consumer goods, manufacturing, where they're adopting RFID both with mobile devices to find things, and as well as the VMI solution to have visibility to critical inventories that we're going to need to perform those functions.
If you were to pick one application area that our attendees could choose to apply their RFID technology to, would it be outbound, inbound? Where do you get the biggest bang for your buck right away?
That's a good question. And again, it all depends. If you're in the retail space, you've got expense offsets and chargebacks. So the ROI is obvious there. It's going to be in the outbound, immediately on the outbound shipments, shipping out, customer satisfaction, all of that thing. That's the first place. If you don't have a mandated solution and you're not in the constraints of packaging details, and you're not going to get charged, then the inbound side, you want to make sure it's coming in your back door is accurate. You're not going to be able to satisfy whatever it is you're doing internally, whether it be distribution, cross-docking, manufacture, whatever it is. You're not going to be able to do it unless you've got accurate visibility to what your inventory position is. So the inbound side becomes very critical.
Very good. Thank you, Mike.